You learn to become this person. You probably think you know your personality. You're independent, quiet, sensitive, ambitious. Maybe you're the person everyone depends on. Maybe you're the person who never asks for help. You've probably said, "That's just who I am." But what if some of the things you call personality aren't personality at all? What if you learned them? Imagine a child who discovers very early that being upset makes people uncomfortable. So they stop crying in front of others. They become quiet when they're hurt. They learn to solve problems alone. Eventually, everyone starts calling them mature, independent, strong. Years later, they're an adult who says, "I don't really need anyone." And they believe it. But maybe they didn't become independent because they never needed people. Maybe they became independent because somewhere along the way, they learned that needing people wasn't safe. And that's the strange thing about personality. Sometimes you don't just discover who you are. You learn who you're allowed to be. You learn what gets you approval, what creates conflict, what makes people stay, what makes them leave. And after repeating those behaviors for years, the adaptation starts feeling like your identity. You call it your personality. So today, let's look at the psychology of the person you became. Not to convince you that your personality is fake, but to help you recognize something much more important. Which parts of you are genuinely yours? And which parts did you learn because they once helped you survive, belong, or be loved? When adaptation becomes personality, think about the traits people usually describe as personality. Being agreeable, being ambitious, being independent, being calm, being responsible, being emotional. None of these traits are automatically good or bad. The important question is, where did yours come from? Independence can come from confidence, or from learning that relying on people ends badly. Being agreeable can come from genuine kindness, or from being terrified of disappointing people. Ambition can come from passion, or from believing achievement is the only way to feel worthy. Perfectionism can come from high standards, or from learning that mistakes make you less lovable. From the outside, these people can look identical, but internally, one may be expressing themselves, while the other may be protecting themselves. And you can't always tell the difference until you ask, what happens if I stop being this person? The mask you forgot you were wearing. Carl Jung used the word persona for the social face we present to the world. And having a persona isn't a problem. You behave differently with your boss than with your closest friend. That's normal. The problem begins when the role becomes so familiar that you forget it's a role. You become the responsible one, the funny one, the strong one, the peaceful one, the successful one, the person who keeps everyone together. At first, you perform the role because it works. Then other people start expecting it. And eventually, you start expecting it from yourself. That's when the mask becomes a cage. Because now you're not simply behaving that way. You're afraid not to. Why you feel like a different person around different people. Maybe you're quiet around your family, playful around your friends, controlled at work, and strangely anxious in relationships. Then, when you're finally alone, you wonder, which version of me is actually real? The answer might be uncomfortable. All of them are you. Different environments simply activate different parts of you. Around someone critical, you may become defensive. Around someone unpredictable, you may monitor their mood constantly. Around someone who needs you, you may become the rescuer. Around someone you admire, you may desperately try to prove yourself. You aren't consciously choosing a new personality every time. Your brain is reaching for a familiar strategy, a strategy that once worked, and the more often you use it, the more automatic it becomes. The exhaustion of maintaining yourself. This is where the difference between being yourself and maintaining yourself becomes impossible to ignore. Imagine coming home after a normal day. You put your bag down. Your phone lights up. Someone asks, "Are you okay?" You type, "Yeah, just tired." And you mean it. But maybe you're not tired because the day was unusually difficult. Maybe you're tired because for 8 hours, you were monitoring yourself, how you sounded, how you looked, whether you disappointed someone, whether you were being useful enough, whether you were saying too much, whether you were saying too little, whether you were being the person everyone expected. Then the door closes. Nobody needs anything from you anymore. And for the first time all day, you don't have to perform. That's when you realize how exhausted you actually are. Sometimes, exhaustion isn't caused by doing too much. Sometimes it's caused by constantly maintaining a version of yourself, the parts of you that didn't get to exist. Every adaptation has a cost. If you learned to always be responsible, you may have lost touch with spontaneity. If you learned to always be agreeable, you may have lost touch with anger. If you learned to always be independent, you may have lost the ability to receive. If you learned to always be rational, you may have learned to distrust your emotions. And those parts don't necessarily disappear. They show up in strange ways, sometimes as envy. You watch someone being carefree, and something inside you aches. Sometimes as irritation. Someone expresses their emotions freely, and you immediately think they're being dramatic. Sometimes as attraction. You're fascinated by someone who seems completely comfortable being the person you've spent years trying not to be. And sometimes as resentment. You spend your entire life being responsible, and secretly resent everyone who gets to be careless. This doesn't mean every emotion hides some deep psychological secret, but your strongest reactions can give you clues, especially when you keep having the same reaction to the same kind of person over and over again. That's just how I am. There's a strange comfort in turning a pattern into an identity. I avoid confrontation because that's just who I am. I'm a perfectionist. I don't need people. I'm just emotionally unavailable. A label can explain you, but it can also protect you from examining yourself. Personality frameworks can be useful, but the moment a label becomes an excuse, it stops helping you understand yourself. A personality pattern is information. It isn't a prison sentence. You can be naturally quiet and still learn to speak up. You can be analytical and still learn emotional awareness. You can be independent and still learn how to receive love. You can be sensitive and still become emotionally strong. Understanding yourself should give you more choices, not fewer. 4 questions that reveal who you became. You don't need another personality test. Start by asking yourself 4 questions. First, what repeatedly drains me? Not what is difficult. What consistently requires me to perform a version of myself? Second, what do I envy? Not someone's money or possessions. What quality do they have that makes you think, I wish I could be like that? Their confidence? Their freedom? Their ability to say no? Their ability to be vulnerable? That envy may be pointing toward a part of yourself you've neglected. Third, what makes me defensive? What criticism makes you react much more strongly than you think you should? Sometimes, defensiveness is protecting an old wound. Sometimes it's simply protecting something important to you. Either way, it's worth noticing. Fourth, Who am I when I don't need anything from anyone? No one to impress. No one to please. No one to rescue. No one watching. What remains? That question may tell you more about yourself than any four-letter personality code ever could. Ever could. You don't have to destroy who you became. And this is important. Don't hate the person you became. That person may have protected you. Your independence may have helped you survive difficult situations. Your perfectionism may have helped you succeed. Your ability to read people may have kept you safe. Your emotional distance may have given you time to heal. You don't have to destroy those traits. You simply have to understand them. Because once you understand why you became someone, you finally have a choice about whether you still need to be that person. You can keep the parts that genuinely belong to you and slowly release the parts that only existed because you were afraid of what would happen without them. Know yourself differently. Maybe knowing yourself isn't about finding one perfect personality type. Maybe it's about noticing the difference between who you are and who you learned you had to be. Maybe you really are quiet. Maybe you're genuinely ambitious. Maybe you truly love helping people. But mixed into those traits may be old rules you never consciously chose. Don't disappoint anyone. Don't need too much. Don't make mistakes. Don't show weakness. Don't take up too much space. And if you've lived by those rules long enough, they can sound exactly like your own voice. Until one day, you stop and ask, did I choose this life? Or did I simply become very good at living the life that was expected of me? You don't need to become someone else. You don't need to destroy your personality. You may simply need to stop abandoning the parts of yourself that never deserve to be abandoned. Because the goal isn't to become a completely different person. It's to become less divided, less performed, more aware, more free to choose. You learn to become this person. Now you get to decide who you become next. If this made you see yourself differently, subscribe to Quiet Power. Because sometimes the most important psychological discovery isn't finding out what type of person you are. It's finally understanding why you became one.